Now, as we venture into 2023, we bear witness to regulatory uncertainties worldwide, with negative sentiments from the US and EU, as well as hints of regulations going on in Asia. Now, we experience the recurrent loss of digital assets due to customer technological ignorance and service provider negligence. And till this day, both individuals and institutions often lack understanding of infrastructure requirements for engaging in the digital asset space. So the next talk is very interesting. It's titled, How Custody Will Evolve in 2023. And to tell us more, let us welcome Sidney Macdessi, Head of Institutional Sales from Levain Macdessi. Big hand, everybody.
My name's Sidney Macdessi. I'm the Head of Institutional Sales at Levain, and today I've been tasked with giving you guys a bit of a picture into the future when it comes to custody technology. Now, just to give you a bit of insight as to why we've been asked to paint that picture, over the last 12 months, or even further back, as an institution, we've been dealing in institutional custody, mainly with retail clients for the last 4 years, and then more recently with institutional asset managers, financial planners, treasury managers, anyone of that category. And we have a very unique insight into the wants and needs of the market, which we believe will drive the future of custody tech. But before going into that, I want to go into why we think DeFi is imminent to start with in terms of a transition of financial systems. So a lot of this you will already know. You know, we were all born into a very centralized financial system. We're all very aware of the intermediaries in the traditional financial systems, and we also are very aware how much we were willing to pay for somebody to be in between two parties and facilitate trust with an exchange of data or value. We built large tier 1 institutions, and they had a monopoly on trust for the longest time until now. With the onset of decentralized finance, we've figured out a way to take out that intermediary element and enable a facilitation of trust between two parties exchanging value or data using code, math-based trust. It ensured that there was disintermediation, a permissionless system, transparency, and interoperability between parties. In this system, we lacked those features. It wasn't permissionless. It was exclusive to a certain portion of the market. It wasn't transparent. It incorporated black box models where often there was negligence or misuse of funds. It definitely wasn't disintermediated, and the intermediaries were able to clip the ticket for whatever price they wanted, and it wasn't interoperable. It was fragmented and disparate. What we have now is an opportunity. For the longest time, retail has been the only part of the, I'd say, financial system to really take up this opportunity. It's really quite easy for retail. When you're dealing with personal finances, your risk appetite is higher, right? You're only accountable to yourself. As long as you have an internet connection and are relatively technologically savvy, you can participate. And they did. There was wealth creation opportunities, staking, lending, P2P lending. They were generating yields that they weren't previously able to generate. For institutions, the same opportunity is also available. For the first time, they have access to new asset classes. So I want you to imagine a small to medium asset manager, a financial planner, who has typically been investing their clients' funds into yield, stocks, equities, bonds, REITs, the only basic sources of yield and returns. Now having access to markets previously exclusive to the tier 1 institutions, such as lending, tokenized real-world assets. But at the same time, being able to transact with lower transaction costs, higher operational efficiencies, and also disintermediated exchanges. What's driving the institutional interest is basically the potential of high risk-adjusted returns And what that has led to is an industry that has grown from $700 million to $200 billion over a 3-year period. But there are hurdles between institutions fully participating in DeFi and reaching that promised land. And those hurdles come with regulatory uncertainty, complexity of user experience, security risks, lack of insurance, and lack of institutional-grade solutions. So although there is a clear opportunity to participate in new yield-generating opportunities, new investment opportunities, new infrastructures that are economically and operationally superior, there's still a missing piece before they fully adopt. And that missing piece can be solved with custody, and that's why this topic is so important. So custody has a rich history. Back here we were dealing with clay tablets as a form of ledger. Through here we had physical safekeeping of assets. Here we had the onset of the internet, online banking. And around here we had regulation stepping in due to the continual negligence of centralized custodians. But each step along the way has caused an evolution in custody due to 2 main factors. New asset types coming into the market, which requires new technology and new regulatory compliance, and the incompetence of existing custodians of the market. So, the current participation of institutional DeFi by institutions is going through stages. They identified the opportunity, they landed, and they began to engage. These were the pioneers. And the pioneers were basically punched in the mouth. Because what happened was there was still a technological ignorance associated with custodial technology. And so we began to learn very quickly that we need to revisit this technology, and there is a delicate balance emerging. A balance between disintermediation, decentralization, the full ownership, automation, speed and transparency, but also security, regulatory compliance, risk management, consumer protection, integrations, and the privacy of data. This is a familiar story with emerging technologies. The same thing happened, just to give you a bit of a comparison, with Spotify. When Spotify first emerged, there were ideological endpoints. There was Pirate Bay and the traditional music label industry. And then Spotify came in and said, okay, how are we going to enable digital distribution, low-cost access to music, but also comply with copyright laws and maintaining good relationships with the labels? And of course, they found their solution, and we know what happened next. The same thing is happening in DeFi. The ideology of true, pure decentralization, but also the compliance of traditional finance. Now, to get into the expansion component of the exploration journey, institutions need tools that facilitate that balance. And that's where custody comes in. So when we talk about the future of custody, we're going to imagine what the tools are that we will need to get into that expansion stage. This is custody currently. Okay? We're going to start with the basic level, and we're going to construct custody from the foundations all the way to the top. Custody right now is split amongst managed custodians, hybrid custodians, and tech providers. This is no different to the banks, essentially. People holding your assets for you. These people share the load. This is pure technology that empowers the individual entity to store, manage, and transact their assets, or the assets of their clients. Now, there's pros and cons on each side. Basically, if you're a managed custodian with full centralization, yes, the accountability of the assets is no longer sitting on you. However, you're still susceptible to counterparty risk. You're still susceptible to the loss of assets or removal of assets due to malicious black box models, right? And then finally, if you are a centralized managed custodian, you actually don't have full control or ownership of your assets. Susceptible to overreach or internal fraud. And we've seen that. We saw that with those headlines before. With self-custody, which is what we've opted in for, yes, the personal accountability is all on you, but there is no counterparty risk because you own all the risk. There is no black box model because you have full control of where your assets go. And so, going forward, we envision custody tech to all be built upon the layer of self-custody frameworks. Now, self-custody in itself is a combination of modules, okay? The idea is self-custody, but how you actually facilitate it is a combination of technologies. The first of which is wallet technology. Wallet technology, digital asset wallet technology, is basically how you store the keys, both public and private, that are needed to authorize a transaction, right? And there's been a bit of a battle at the moment between multisig and MPC. We've opted in for multisig, despite MPC being the popular kid on the block. And the reason is these 4 main points. It's signature accountability. Every key in the multisig wallet is identified and attributed to a specific individual or entity. So, if there is a misuse of funds, or if there is malicious activity, or someone has simply screwed up, you can straight away identify who it was, what happened, and how to offset it. MPC does not have that accountability factor. It's battle-tested and proven technology. The actual cryptographic risk has been analyzed way longer than MPC. It's been peer-reviewed and it's been tested by the public since the onset of blockchain. MPC is a relatively new technology, and there are fallibilities emerging today. It's truly decentralized, and there's no single point of failure. MPC, at its essence, is a single signature, single key. Yes, there are frameworks in place to ensure that those keys cannot be reconstructed and then used for malicious activities. However, it's new, it's emerging, and we don't know that for sure. Now, that's all fine. Storage of private and public keys is a good foundation, but we're talking about institutional use here. And institutional use is very different to retail use. You have employees, personnel, limits, and fiduciary duties to your clients to ensure nobody is acting negligently with their funds. So what that means is you have 2 options. You have policy enforcement or manual oversight. The custody tech of the future will need to not only have a multi-signatory wallet, but it will need to have a policy engine. And a policy engine will ensure there are rules in place, such as whitelisted addresses, transaction limits. At the enterprise level, they will have user permissions, approvers, viewers, signers. And so if you run an institution with 10, 20, 30, 40 people, whatever it may be, you will be able to scalably and automatically maintain the policies over your entire organization. And that is absolutely necessary to be overlaid on any form of storage in an institution. Now, that's a good framework for storage. It's a good foundation. It's solid. But no institution gets into DeFi simply to set and forget their funds. DeFi was put in place for institutions to both preserve and create wealth. And in order to do that, we need to figure out how to connect a multi-signatory wallet overlaid with the policy engine from a secure storage point all the way to DeFi protocols. Institutions want to partake in lending, they want to partake in staking, they want to partake in the purchase of security tokens, real-world asset tokens, whatever it may be. They want to provide liquidity and generate yield. That's their purpose. In order to achieve that, every custody tech going into 2023 will need to ensure they have a connection protocol. And we've opted in for Wallet Connect. We think Wallet Connect gives us access to the widest array of protocols. It's also a secured and encrypted connection. This is also a part of custody. Now, one thing you have to remember is we're talking about adoption between traditional finance and decentralized finance. And so traditional finance is extremely used to their current systems of portfolio management tooling, and if we are going to enter the DeFi space, this becomes even more important than ever. Not only is it extremely volatile, but it is changing up to the minute. So anyone who is participating in decentralized finance as an institution within their custody tech solution needs to have the tooling to ensure their exposure is being tracked. They have real-time alerts for suspicious activities. They have automatic rebalancing of risk rebalancing features, and of course, the ability to report on performance to instill client confidence. Right. So now we're at the higher layers of custodial technology. Storage, policy control, access to protocols, portfolio management tooling and systems. And now we talk about multi-chain accessibility and open APIs. Nobody wants to be limited. We've spoken to roughly 60 institutions over the last few months, and we're talking about the leading institutions in the space, and we ask them, this is straight from the horse's mouth, what's most important to you? And apart from security, it's flexibility and access to the widest range of investment opportunities. You need to be multi-chain. Your custody technology solution going into 2023 needs to be multi-chain. Secondary to that, it needs to have open APIs. It needs to be able to communicate to alternative systems being used throughout the institution in order to automate compliance and regulation, receive real-time data, and of course oversee their clients' funds throughout their fiduciary duties. Now, at the capstone of all this is adaptability. This is probably the most important feature of custodial technology going into 2023. DeFi in itself and digital assets is involved in a realm of constantly evolving regulation, constantly evolving technology. And the last thing you want to do as an institution is be stuck with a service provider who cannot keep up with that constant evolution and that constant change. So how do you ensure that your application is adaptive in the face of change? You ensure the infrastructure is modular. You can add, subtract, change the specific components of the technology you're using in accordance with your operational needs changing. Ensure it's scalable. As you grow, both in personnel and assets under management, ensure you have an infrastructure that can handle that growth. And continuous iterations. Is the application going to have the ability to continuously deploy updated code in order to offset and mitigate the risks of associated with ongoing change? If it's able to do that, if it's able to store your funds in a decentralized manner, overlay that with policy controls, enable you to connect that storage to DeFi protocols for the purpose of wealth creation and preservation, overlay that with the portfolio management tooling systems you need as a fiduciary of funds, and finally, able to continually adapt in the face of change, you have a very reasonable solution for custody going into 2023. This combination of technology was secure, adaptable, decentralized, user-friendly, compliant, transparent, protective of data, and always has an avenue of exit in the case of negligence. And just as a final point, we can paint a picture, we can try and predict as much as we want what custody will look like. But until there is a mass adoption of this technology into 2023 and into the future, we really won't know. The market will dictate the demands, and the market will dictate the product roadmap for custody technology. But this framework that we've discussed today will at least give you a good start going into 2023. Thank you.